man doth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Now concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and our being gathered together to him, we ask you, brothers, not to be quickly shaken in mind or alarmed, either by a spirit or a spoken word, or a letter seeming to be from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord is come. Let no one deceive you in any way, for that day will not come unless the rebellion comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. Do you not remember that when I was still with you, I told you these things? And you know what is restraining him now, so that he may be revealed in his time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains it will do so until he is out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will kill with the breath of his mouth, and bring to nothing by the appearance of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan, with all power and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing, because they refused to love the truth and so be saved. Therefore God sent them a strong delusion.
Okay, so this video today, or this topic, it has to do with the mystery of iniquity, and it's one of those things that seems like a mystery, but in present day existence, where we're at, the things that we're seeing, it's becoming less of a mystery. This mystery of iniquity, and so I want to look at some things that I'm seeing. Some of these things are beyond mind blowing. They're powerful things, and they're all interconnected. And I'm blessed to be seeing them, but I do want to warn you before we start looking at these things. Some of these things will bring about some emotion, and some of these things are dark. Some of these things are uplifting. It just depends on which part of the study we're at. And so I want to go ahead and pull up my presentation here in just a second, but I feel like I should wait a little bit because I know the confusion with the start times. I accidentally clicked in StreamYard Studio 7:15, and I thought I clicked 7, so I was telling everybody 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock. So if you looked at the 7:15 on the bottom of the video, that would have confused you. So hopefully there will be a notice set out, or I guess a YouTube notice will say, hey, they're live, and you guys will find us. If not, come back and rewatch it later. All right, let me add to the stage a presentation. And this is some things that I've just been thinking about that have been on my heart, how things are interconnected with the Messiah and what he did, and show you guys how my thoughts on some of these issues have changed over time. Because as truth seekers, we grow, we progress, we get on different levels of understanding, and it's important to understand things. And I'm learning that there's a difference between knowing and understanding. And knowing the word is something I feel like so many of us, we know these different, it's like some people can just quote, passages without looking. I'm not one of those people, but understanding things in the word and their importance, their significance is extremely important. And so One of the things that we're going to look at first has to do with that curse of the law aspect that we hear about all the time. And one thing that I was thinking of the other day was that there's a verse in Galatians that talk about Yeshua taking on that curse. And curses in general, I never really understood them, but I remember, going back to Genesis, there was the first time that mankind sinned. They disobeyed the Most High. The simple commandments, just don't eat from this one tree. And they did. And so the first thing to be cursed was a serpent or the serpent. And the second thing was the ground. And this ground, when the Father cursed the ground, what did he say? It said, "In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee." And so that was one of the first consequences, was thorns growing up from the ground based on that curse. And so that reminded me, those thorns and that aspect of a curse, again, that verse in Galatians chapter 3. And my view on this has changed dramatically in the last 3 years or so, but I'll read it for you. It says, "Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree." And so when I used to read that years ago, I would read that as the curse of the law, with the law actually being the curse. Has anyone else done that? I know there's probably people today that are like, yes, that is exactly the way I saw that plan out. And so as I'm thinking about this, I mean, it just gets deeper. I'm talking, it's an emotional ride. I just like, when you see some of these things, it just breaks your heart. What's happened on our behalf. But those thorns, I think everybody is familiar with the crown of thorns and that symbol and what it represents. But when I'm thinking about that verse in Galatians, I just have this flash of that very first curse ever in the garden, or I guess the second one. But if you don't count the serpent, it's one of the first where those thorns grew up. And so here you have the Messiah going through what he did, wearing that crown of thorns. And a lot of people think that, like I said, like the law was the curse that was mentioned there. And I was having a hangout with Sean, Kingdom in Context, and he said, yeah, he was bringing up that one time where Moses, he helped lead the people out of slavery and into bondage. Like you're going from one slavery and into one bondage, if that's what the law was. And that's just not the case. And we see that later on with the new covenant, where he writes his law on our hearts. If it's a curse and the law itself was a curse, then that would not be the case. It would not make sense for him to save us and deliver us to write a curse on our hearts, or to set his people free from slavery and real bondage, to then take and send them into another bondage, okay, or a curse, so to speak. And so to clarify that, my wife helped me with this, because I used to debate this stuff. When I married her, she was someone who kept the Sabbath, and me, I thought, this does not apply to me. And I would talk about the law being a curse, and she's like, no, you don't understand. There's blessings and there's curses with the law. And so that took me back to Deuteronomy. And it says here, after he's given the commandments to the people, it says, "See, I am setting before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessings, if you obey the commands of Yahuwah, your Yah, that I am giving you today. The curse, if you disobey the commands of Yahuwah, your Yah, and turn from the way that I command you today, by following other gods, which you have not known." And so you have those blessings and those curses, and you have the Messiah taking on those curses. And so that very first curse, or one of the first curses, of the thorns coming out of the ground. I know there's more significance to the thorns, and we're going to get into that. It goes far beyond the thorns growing up out of the ground. That's just a small aspect of it. And so as I'm thinking of that, though, I went back and I was reading that verse in Matthew. I'll go ahead and full screen this for you guys so you can see it better. That takes me back to Matthew here. And I was reading about this scenario with the crown of thorns, and something new always seems to pop out at you when you're looking at these things. And so when I'm looking at it, here you see where they're releasing Barabbas, which I find his name meaning son of the Father being so significant as well. But you have Barabbas it says, they released he, Barabbas, unto them. And when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the common hall and gathered unto him the whole band of soldiers. And they stripped him and put on him a scarlet robe. And they had a plaited, and when they had plaited a crown of thorns, they put it upon his head, and a reed in his right hand. And for whatever reason, putting that reed in his right hand and seeing that, I had just never had a visual of that. I always had a visual of the crown of thorns, but them putting a reed in his hand made me think, you know, what's going on here? You know, they're looking at him, they're mocking him, they're making sure he's a king. Like, you know, like they're pretty much, as you read on, it says they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." And it says they spit upon him and took the reed, the one they had in his hand, and smote him on the head. This heartbreaking scene. But they're looking at him, mocking him, you know, calling him King of the Jews. He's got this crown of thorns and a reed in his hand. And so as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, what's the significance with that reed? Why a reed? You know, what's the deal with the reed? So I start looking up other verses. And as I'm doing that, I'm having all these other thoughts going on about Psalm, 22 and 23. And I'm remembering that Psalm 22 depicts the crucifixion. And so does Psalm 23. It kind of continues off. And it says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff." And so I'm just picturing Yeshua in that moment right there with the crown of thorns and the reed in his hand, and just that moment of comfort you read here in Psalms. And man, I just lost it. Like it just breaks my heart thinking about these things being so prophetic to the beloved Son. And then that reed making another connection when they're trying to give him water as he's hanging. And they're thinking he's calling out to Elijah, because he says, like it says here in Mark chapter 15, when he's hanging on the cross, he says, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani." And he's speaking in Aramaic, and they're like, we think he's calling out to Elijah. And in our modern Masoretic versions, it says Elias, but they thought he was calling out to Elijah. However, he was quoting Psalm 22. And Psalm 22, if you've never looked into the prophetic connections here, it's powerful. And my brother brought this to my attention about the bulls of Bashan, where the place that he was taken to Herod was ruler over, or governor over, Bashan. And there were soldiers around him. And in Psalm 22, it says, "Many bulls have compassed me. Strong bulls of Bashan have beset me round. They gaped upon me with their mouths as ravening and a roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted in the midst of my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd." I think that's like a piece of like a fragment, like an ancient fragment of like a pot, something that's just like dried up in the desert. "And my tongue cleaveth to my jaws. And thou hast brought me into the dust of death. For dogs have compassed me. The assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones. They look and stare upon me. They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. But be not thou far from me, O Lord, O my strength. Haste thee to help me." And so that's why Psalm 22 came to mind when I'm thinking about that. And then eventually Psalm 23 with the staff comforting him. And here they are giving him this staff and mocking him. So it might have been a brief moment of comfort, just grabbing that reed and remembering that verse. And so that searching into the reed aspect brought me in a bunch of different places, but one of those was Isaiah. And Isaiah 42, if you look at the Septuagint, and I'm finding a fascination with the Septuagint and all the things that it has with it, because it's most likely the translation that Yeshua was using based on how accurately it relates or corresponds with the modern translations of what he said. And so this verse here in Isaiah says, "I have put my spirit upon him. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. He shall not cry nor lift up, nor shall his voice be heard without. A bruised reed shall he not break. So they put that reed in his hand. And when I read that, man, I just was like, wow, this is powerful stuff. And a smoking flax shall he not quench, but he shall bring forth judgment to truth. He shall shine out and shall not be discouraged until he have set judgment on the earth, and in his name shall the Gentiles trust. Thus saith Yahuwah, who made the heaven and established it, who settled the earth and the things in it, and gives breath to the people on it, and spirit to them that tread on it. I, Yahuwah, have called thee in righteousness, and will hold thine hand, and will strengthen thee, and I have given thee for the covenant of a race, for a light of the Gentiles, to open the eyes of the blind, to bring the bound and them that sit in darkness out of bonds and the prison house. Wow. I am the Yahuwah, that is my name. I will not give my glory to another, nor my praises to graven images. And have they not tried to turn the beloved Son into this graven image version of himself that's nowhere near what he really was? And it's heartbreaking to see those things. And seeing that reminds me, and I thought I was reading that prophecy in Isaiah 61 when I saw that, because they're very similar. But Isaiah 61 it's in that same book of what we just read. And so you look further, Isaiah 61, something that sounds very similar, and it's where Yeshua goes into the temple and he's reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah. So he takes this book of Isaiah. So if you imagine, like if you have, or a scroll, if you will, we have all of ours combined together, like the canon of 66 is what most people have. But here they have just the book of Isaiah, the scroll of Isaiah. And so he pulls it out. It says, and there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, and to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. And he closed the book, and he gave it again to the minister, and sat down. And the eyes of all them that were in the synagogue were fastened on him. And he began to say unto them, this day this scripture is this scripture, fulfilled in your ears. And so again, he is talking about that prophecy in Isaiah. How cool is that? And so he opens right up to a prophecy that's about him and reads it to these people. And I just find that fascinating. And you'll see a lot of anti-missionaries say that's not exactly what it says when you look back in Isaiah, but that's only if you're using the Masoretic. Use the Septuagint, far more accurate at quoting what he said. All right. Now here's where it gets even more fascinating, I think. Looking at that read. Again, I just type in the word read. I love technology that we can just like type in the word read and it pulls up all the verses that talk about it. Or you can do that with so many different things. And so this brought me to Ezekiel. And I'm not saying this is the Messiah, but I just thought this was fascinating, where he's having a vision. And it says, in the vision of God, it says, in the visions of God brought he me, sorry, this language is twisting me up here, into the land of Israel, and set me upon a very high mountain, by which was as the frame of a city on the south. And he brought me thither or there. And behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, with a line of flax in his hand and a measuring reed. So a reed in his hand, and he has this appearance like brass. And man, as I'm reading that, I'm just thinking about Revelation, where it says literally his feet were like unto fine brass. And it says that twice, both in chapter 1 and in chapter 2 right here. It may say it somewhere else, but those are the two that I found when looking into this. So beyond fascinating connections there. I'm not saying it was him, but he was the son of a carpenter. So a measuring tool would make sense. And then more connections with the reeds. It calls them bulrushes with Moses. But Moses, here he is, this one that's going to be like a deliverer to the people of Israel being put in an ark. And these bulrushes, what they're commonly known as is, guess what? Reeds. These are reeds that they made an ark out of. And just like the original ark of Noah, this time it's Moses, it's got pitch inside and out. So they're making this thing waterproof, water resistant, because it's going in the water to set people free through water that's eventually going to part. Pretty cool there. And so the Ark of the Covenant, I told you there's more connections with the thorns. The Ark of the Covenant was then made by this same figure, and other people, of course, were making this as well. But you have Moses and the Ark of the Covenant, and this Ark of the Covenant is instructed to be made out of shittim wood. And shittim wood, if you're like me, you don't know what that significance is, you look it up. Shittim wood had thorns. It's a tree that has branches that have thorns, making that Ark of the Covenant. Wow. Look at that. Something there that I feel is far more significant. I don't know if they made the crown of thorns out of these branches, but it would make sense. And this Ark of the Covenant was a special device, or I don't really know of a name to give it. It's the Ark of the Covenant. And this thing was extremely powerful and important. It's where the Most High met with the people between the two cherubims. And if you remember, the cherubims originally mentioned in the Bible, quite mysterious. There were two of them guarding the tree of life so that people couldn't, or I guess the Garden of Eden, so that people couldn't go in and take from the tree of life. So you have two cherubims and that flaming sword. Lots of interconnectedness here. And then the Ark of the Covenant later leading the people into the promised land. And when they left to go to the promised land, where were they leaving? They were leaving a place called Shittim. Same name as the wood that they made the Ark of the Covenant out of. It's like the Most High is trying to give us clues here as to where we're going and the significance to these things. These names usually have a purpose, their meanings, and it just, the deeper you dig, the more you find with this stuff. It's fascinating. And so that's what I wanted to cover first about the law, the curse of the law, just some fascinating stuff. Because I know when you talk about the law, people get angry, they get upset, or they get happy. Just one or two things. There's very rarely an in between. Like, oh, you could talk about the law, that's okay. So I know where people are coming from when they get angry, and so that's why I want to talk about this mystery of iniquity. And when I'm saying that word, those words, mystery of iniquity, I get that from 2 Thessalonians, where they're writing about this mystery. They're writing about the son of perdition and this mystery of iniquity. And so it's important to know what it is. What is this mystery? And I'll read here. This is chapter 2. It says, "Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that you be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as that day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means. For that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." Okay, he's not really actually God, but he's showing himself pretending to be the Most High. And so, who is this son of perdition? There's a lot of people with a lot of different thoughts about this. I just wanted to actually look up verses where I could find that wording, son of perdition or son of destruction, because that word perdition just means destruction. And so in Jubilees chapter 10, it talks about them. And this is a set of people, because it calls them sons instead of just one word, instead of singular son, it says sons. It calls them sons of perdition. But it says, in the third week of this Jubilee, the unclean demons began to lead astray the children of the sons of Noah. So you have unclean spirits right after the flood. And if you don't know what those are or where they came from, read the book of Enoch. That's all I can say. And it says, "And to make error and to destroy them. And the sons of Noah came to Noah their father, and they told him concerning the demons which were leading astray and blinding and slaying his sons, Noah's grandchildren here. And he prayed before the Lord his God and said, God of the spirits of all flesh, who has shown mercy unto me and has saved me and my sons from the waters of the flood, and has not caused me to perish as thou didst the sons of perdition." So this right here tells me it's a group of individuals that perished. Okay. So it was either if you want to think it's mankind, I mean, they died in the flood. They're not going to come back. They're not going to resurrect. I think this is referring to the Nephilim, the ones that were punished and had to fight to the death, and their spirits lived on as unclean spirits, still causing or wreaking havoc like you see here. And so that's the sons of perdition according to Jubilees. And I believe it's the unclean spirits. And I mean, it possibly could be grouping them in with mankind, but I think it could be the Nephilim. And so you have here in John, the Messiah talking. He says, I kept them in thy name, which thou hast given me. I have guarded them, and none of them is lost, but the son of perdition, that the scripture might be fulfilled. And so it's very, very mysterious the way these things are. There's not a whole lot of clues with that other than what I saw there in Jubilees and in John. And then you have here in 2 Thessalonians, as you read on, remember you not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things, and now you know. And this is confusing wording. I'm going to find a translation that words this way better, because I read this a million times, and the wording is just so, it's not like how it's not at all like how we talk today. And so it says, and now you know that what withholdeth that he might be revealed in his time, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. So it was already at work back then. Only he who now letteth will let. See, that's confusing. I don't know what that means. Until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So having that pleasure in unrighteousness, that lawlessness. And so looking at that word, looking at the actual definitions of these words, what do they mean? What does iniquity mean? Well, if you aren't familiar with Bible Hub, you can go there and look up a verse, and then just click the little interlinear option, and it'll pull up the meanings of these words. And so you can further break them down. What do they mean in their original language? And so that word iniquity translates as lawlessness. And when you find out what that word further means, it's properly, I mean, obviously, without law and lawlessness, the utter disregard for God's law, his written and living word. So you're literally, utterly disregarding the law. That is what lawlessness is. And so this mystery of utterly disregarding his law, when you hear that word mystery of iniquity, that's what that is, a mystery of lawlessness. It was already at work then, and right now lawlessness is just on a major rise. And it's always been popular. When you look back throughout time in the Bible, it's appealing to people to be lawless. They feel like they're getting set free from rules, but what they're becoming is slaves to their flesh. Once you start becoming, trying to get into lawlessness and giving in to all the lust like they want you to do, it's not setting you free. You become a slave to your flesh, so much so that you become willing to hurt other people for your own benefit, for your own pleasure, whether it be drugs, whether it be physical, lust, temptations, things of your mind. You're not getting set free by going that route. It's an illusion. It's a lie. They act like you're going to be set free. I tell you what, as somebody who has been set free from lust and all those things, you don't realize you're a slave until you get set free. And it's amazing. It's powerful. It's not something we can do on our own. I tried doing it on my own my entire life, and it's not something you can. It takes the Most High and the Holy Spirit setting you free. You just have to ask for it and be ready. It's not like you can just not be ready and be set free. You have to be ready for it. He's going to give you what you're ready for. And so I know a lot of people struggle with the lustful aspects of the things of this world and giving in. Like they just want you to be lawless, and you can be set free from that. And it's the ultimate. It's totally not bringing you into bondage at all when you get set free. And I don't know why this little red box likes to move every time I move it back. I've been doing this with this exact same slide for a long time. So sorry about that. But that word iniquity or lawlessness is the exact same one used by the Messiah when he's talking about the people at the end, when he's going to say, I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. And so that's important. The words of the Messiah are extremely important. I don't want to be in that category of somebody he's saying, depart from me, those of you who practice utterly disregarding his law. And the most popular teachers out there in the world, I know in the Christian faith, are saying his law doesn't really matter. Don't look into it. We don't need to understand it. We're set free from that. It was a curse. It was bondage. They tell us all these things, and I believed it. We just got to be careful, because there's just so many different false teachings out there about this subject, so many false assumptions. If I start talking about the law, initially it's like, hey, you're a Hebrew rooter, you're somebody who is on point with a lot of things, but then you start talking about the law, and that's where I have to go. I get those types of things quite often, but that's not the case. I'm not saying I'm justified by my works. Just want to put that out there because I know somebody's going to go to the comments and say that. Anytime we talk about commandments or laws, that usually gets said that we believe we're justified by works. And I was saved way before I knew anything about the 10 Commandments, or I couldn't quote them for sure. Still can't. I mean, I have to sit there and look at them and study them out. But right here is another from the Messiah, the Son of Man. It says here, shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend in them which do iniquity. So it's becoming less of a mystery. The more we look into it, iniquity is just lawlessness. That's it. People who utterly disregard the law. And it's about to get dark because we're going to be seeing what that looks like. Here's a little side-by-side comparison. You got lawlessness, which is without the law, or utter disregard for the law. And then you have lawful, which is the opposite of that, which is with the law or keeping the law. So you have that night and day contrast right there. And then this version here, I'm not going to read the whole thing. This is a version of 2 Thessalonians. It's the complete Jewish version. And I look at all these different versions trying to find some that make the most sense. And this is one of them that I found fascinating. And it says here, I'm going to read the blue part that's highlighted here. For already the separating from Torah, or which another word for that is instruction, the Father's instructions, is at work secretly, but it will be secretly only until he who is restraining is out of the way. So that's the part where I was reading earlier, and it was like, he who letteth will let, only. And like you're getting confused by what is it really saying here, because we don't talk like that. We don't speak with the King James English in modern day, so we don't understand a lot of what they're saying. But here it says, until he who is restraining, and you look that word up, it really does say restraining, is out of the way, then the one who embodies separation from the law, or that lawlessness, Torah, will be revealed, the one whom the Lord Yeshua will slay with the breath of his mouth and destroy by the glory of his coming. And you look at who he destroys later on in Revelation, and it's that beast that was taken, and the false prophets and all them, they were cast into that lake of fire, the ones that wrought miracles before him. So you see that son of perdition doing miracles, and you see the ones cast into the lake of fire doing miracles. Sounds like they're talking about the same people, if you ask me. And so that restraining, being let out of the way, I don't know about you guys, but it feels like a barrier has been uplifted. Something has just, whatever's been restraining these lawless people and kept them into somewhat hiding, has just been, it's like it's almost been removed. And they just are just blatantly out there, and it's no longer a mystery. They want you to see these things. They want to target your children, and they're always putting this stuff, I mean, front and center. Super Bowl half shows, you name it. These guys, they're out there openly satanic, openly with an agenda, mocking the Messiah. You've got somebody like in the bottom left corner here pretending to go into space. This guy wearing a suit called the Soldier of Satan with a Baphomet head right there on the chest. And now he's walking around pretending to be for free speech and for us conservatives, as people that have values. And it's sad that they can do that, and people are looking at them as these heroes. And here's something I wanted to share. My sister shared this with me in a message, And it has to do with them targeting children now. This is in after-school programs. They actually have an after-school Satan Club meeting. This is in Tennessee, part of the Bible Belt, right above me. I know, Dennis and Debbie, you guys there in Tennessee, this is probably somewhat close to you guys. I know it's close to me. It's several hours away, but still close to home, where they're having after-school Satan Club meetings. And when you go down and you read the comments, okay, this is their pictures where they have the children involved in these hands-on activities. It's fun. It's colorful. People are saying, this is what freedom of religion is. And I'm so happy that they had a great and safe time. This is wonderful. What a great way to give kids fun and playful education. Great job, Tennessee. Looks like an awesome time. Hope we get one near me. Yeah, like everyone is just so happy about leading their children somewhere where these unclean spirits at work want them to be sacrificed to them. It's beyond ignorant. But people are falling for this lawlessness, this very appealing language that's been used by these unclean spirits for years. Here's some more comments. This is what freedom of religion is. Oh, I think I've already read these. Never mind. Same ones. There you go. This is brilliant, inclusive. This is from somebody's name that is Stop LGBTQ Hate Online. This is brilliant, inclusive, no judgment, and welcoming to all. Well done to all involved. Glad it went well. Go Tennessee. Amazing STEM exercises. Are they doing STEM exercises? Love young minds at work. Wow. I mean, this is close, guys. Close to home. So that's some of the sad things. Pray for those children. Pray for their parents. I mean, their parents to send their children into these little after school things. I'm sure there was some sort of note, I'm hoping, that was signed. You never know. Sometimes they might have just sent a colorful packet home and said, here, kids, have your parents sign this. And the parents had no clue. Probably said it was a religious hangout. Who knows? It's bad enough it's in our schools being taught things that go against the Most High's creation account just daily. It's a battle zone out there with our children. But those things now creeping into schools, like I said, it's like something has just, something that's been restraining this lawlessness seems to have just let up. And could just be me. Maybe we've all just been blind to it and it's been going on like this our whole lives, but it seems more out there. So since this does deal with the mystery of iniquity and lawlessness, what does lawlessness look like? Where does it come from? It has an origin. It has to have an origin. And so you go back again to the book of Enoch. This is in chapter 8, when the watchers, who are supposed to be, these what people call the fallen angels, were supposed to be looking out for man. They made a pact to corrupt all flesh, to do all these different things. And them and their offspring, the Nephilim, those 3 different races of giants, they taught mankind a lot of things. It's how the world got so corrupt so fast to where there was only one family that was not corrupted. That was Noah and his family. And so the things they taught mankind, here's a few. This isn't everything they taught them, just a bullet list of some of the essentials. They taught them how to make weapons of war, the workings of metals, beautifying of the eyelids. That always reminds me of Egypt. Godlessness, fornication, which is interesting, godlessness, because they want to be worshipped as a god. They want to be deified. Fornication, enchantments, root cuttings, astrology. And that root cuttings is very mysterious. A lot of people are like, what is that? It's basically pharmakia. You're mixing roots together. You're making things. One of the things I believe it talks about is they were making birth control out of mixing of roots so that women could be promiscuous and keep their figures. They weren't having children, by all these different people. So same stuff we see today, guys. Astrology. And then number 8, lawlessness. They taught them lawlessness, not doing what the Most High wanted them to do way back when, before the flood. That's how it got so bad. Number 9, the smiting of infants in the womb, aka abortion. That was, believe it or not, taught by the fallen. And now it just has become, in modern day, it's a choice, people. That's what they want us to believe. It's a choice. No, it is something taught to us by the unclean spirits and the fallen. And so that was number 9. Number 10, revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved in heaven. They thought they revealed everything. They didn't know all the secrets. They thought they did. And so they revealed things that people, it says here, were striving to learn. And that's how they advertise this stuff, this dark arts, all these things. They advertise it like, oh, you want to know these secrets? Yeah, here, look here. We got this for you. Next thing you know, they are leading you down a path of destruction. It's never good. It never ends well. Never, and not once throughout the word has it ended well for anyone who has fallen for these things. And you see them fall for these things constantly. I mean, right after the Red Sea crossing, they're falling for these demonic lies, worshiping the golden calf, doing things like that. Extremely sad. And so going to the Bible for this, I was interested in a lot of this stuff. And I'm reading the word, going back through the Old Testament for the first time in a long time. And I'm seeing a repetitive book mentioned. It's called the Book of the Law. It's mentioned over and over and over. And this Book of the Law, a lot of people, you've got the law in the Bible, but there was actually a book of the law, which I believe was just a simplistic list of everything that we are expected to do. And I start looking for this book. And when you go through the Bible and you type in, Bible Gateway, you type in Book of the Law, it pulls up many different verses. You've got Deuteronomy, Joshua. It's all throughout Joshua, Second Kings, Chronicles, Nehemiah or Nehemiah. Got it everywhere. Hebrews, Galatians. This thing is talked about quite a bit. And so as I'm looking for that, I'm thinking, there's the Dead Sea Scrolls. Maybe we'll find something. And when you try to find it, what you end up finding is a version of this book that is not from the Father. It's called the Book of the Law, but it's the enemy's version of the Book of the Law. This was a man named Aleister Crowley who wrote this in 1904. And he received the text or scriptures called the Book of the Law, he said, from guess who? Demons, these unclean spirits, the ones that Yeshua was constantly sending out of people. They were tormenting people. If they're so good, like they claim to be in this book and so loving, why were they tormenting people? Why were these people living in caves, slashing themselves? Why were people afraid of them? And you'll find that theme. They try to act like they're on our side, but if you've ever seen someone who's demonized, it is not pleasant. And so don't go and read this book. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I haven't read this book. Don't read this book. But some symbolism you see associated with that religion, Thelema, it's everywhere. Space Force, NASA. This stuff is throughout lots of different things. And so this is where it's going to start to get a little bit dark. And and again, a lot of these things, I think I read like the opening statements of this book when I was looking into this, and I just felt like, put this away. Don't even read it. Like, get far away from this book. There's some things in here that even though you might think you're spiritually strong enough to handle, just don't. They have been luring people away from the Most High for generations. But the basic premise of this, and I want you to hear how evil these unclean spirits are, because it's allegedly written by demons. And the premise is, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. So basically, do whatever you want. And this demon says, I am the snake that giveth knowledge and delight, and bring glory, and stir the hearts of men with drunkenness, to worship me, take wine and strange drugs. They want you drugged. They want you dumbed down. They don't want you wise. They don't want you knowing things. So yeah, go ahead, take your drugs, like the rappers are telling you to do. Whereof I will tell my prophet, they try to mimic the Most High. They have their own little prophets, and be drunk thereof. Lust, enjoy all things of sense and rapture. Fear not that any God shall deny thee for this. They don't want you to be afraid of any God denying you, but guess what? Guess what? They're afraid. They're very afraid. When the Messiah comes to them, guess what he says? Here's one. This is what I remembered when I'm thinking about that. Here comes Yeshua. He says, and when he came to the other side into the country of the Gergesenes, or however you say that word, Gergesenes, there met him two possessed with devils, coming out of the tombs, exceeding fierce, so that no man might pass by that way. And behold, they cried out, saying, what have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? They know who he is. Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? So they're telling their followers, hey, you do whatever you want. You don't have to worry about any other God punishing you. But they know right here, they show it on full display. They know they're going to have to answer for what they're doing. They don't want you to think that there's an answer. There's someone to answer to for all of the things that they're going to try to convince their followers into doing. So don't be deceived by these unclean spirits. They are not. And I hear so many people when I'm following truth, there's every now and then a Satanist will creep in there and say, hey guys, they're not all that bad. They're not bad. They're good. We've been lied to. And they try to lure truthers in thinking that these unclean spirits have their best interests at heart. But read these words right here. This is what they take credit for. It says here, you'll hear these descriptions here of this demon. It says, with my hawk's beak, I peck at the eyes of Jesus as he hangs upon the cross. Yeah, you're going to get destroyed when he returns, believe it or not. I flap my wings in the face of Muhammad and blind him with my claws. I tear out the flesh of the Indian and the Buddhist. Sounds loving. Mongol and Din. And so I'm not going to read everything. I don't like reading all these words. But the part in blue, down at the bottom, let's skip down. But the king and the proud, the royal and the lofty, ye are brothers. As brothers fight ye. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. So again, pushing that lawlessness. And if you see the imagery at the bottom, that is on the far left, that Horus character. This is the one allegedly speaking here. And again, it's called a mystery of iniquity. But when you do your research, it's not a mystery. These are the same demons at work in Babylon, ancient Egypt. That's why you see the same poses. You look there at Tammuz, part of a trinity in Egypt. And they have different names. Like his name's not going to be Tammuz in Egypt because of the Tower of Babel. When everything's spread out, the language has changed. The names changed. And so you see the Babylonian trinity in Egypt. And this is where things start to get pretty controversial. The oldest church here in D.C., Washington, D.C., is called the Old Holy Trinity Church. And it is a Roman Catholic church. And it was erected by a Jesuit, of all people, of all groups, named Francis Neal. And so they put their mysteries right out there, right in the heart of the evil one's headquarters here in America. And so through the reception of his book, he's proclaiming there's this new era, this Eon of Horus, that demon that was speaking. And again, do as thou wilt, being the whole of the law. That was what they wanted. And there was a big push for this in the 60s, where you were seeing everybody going around just doing whatever they wanted. And it had a major rise, and it sort of died down just a little bit. And now, it's come back with a vengeance on our children. So we really have to look out for them. And so going back to the unholy trinity that you saw in ancient Babylon that we were looking at, you now have the Pope. And after Yeshua left, back in, with the Roman creeds, that's why it's important that DC looks like Rome. Those Roman creeds, changing the image of the Messiah, going against what he says. Because remember the lawlessness aspect. He's telling us that the greatest of all commandments is to hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. You've got the Pope over here, a Jesuit, saying that each creature testifies that God is three. It's interesting that he says creature. He also said it left its mark on creation, their creed doctrines. And so I find it significant that man was created on the sixth day, and the imagery that they put up of the Messiah looks a lot like this graven image, false image of the Messiah. So lots of creepy things here. And the last thing, I don't want to quote any more of these unclean spirits, but this pertains to the heliocentric model and the fascination with space and everything space related. Because again, this was from 1904. And it says, now you shall know that the chosen priest and apostle, again, they're using the language just like the Bible, of infinite space is the prince priest, that's hard to say, the beast, and in his woman called the scarlet woman is all power given. They shall gather my children. Look, tries to talk like the Most High. They shall gather my children into their fold. They shall bring the glory of the stars into the hearts of men, since I am infinite space and infinite stars. So bringing the glory of the stars to the hearts of men. I've talked about this before. They've done that. We grew up wishing on a star, watching Star Wars, Star Trek, wanting to see our names put on those Hollywood stars. Everybody wants to grow up and be a movie star, a rock star. And then, when you flip one of those stars upside down, I found this fascinating. It looks like the Masonic Lodge pentagram right there. I mean, it's like an exact replica. And it's all coming from these unclean spirits. They tell you what they're going to do, and they do it. They have an agenda. Yes, there is an agenda. And so that scarlet woman they were talking about reminds me of Revelation. There's a lot of things here that are intertwined with Revelation. The woman arrayed in purple and scarlet color it talks about here. It says, decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written. There's the mystery again. Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints. Again, they're acting like they're these peaceful people gathering in their children. They're drunk on the blood of the saints. They have been slaughtering the saints. They've done this since, even prior to the Messiah. This stuff's been going on. And with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. So this is telling us that it's coming from the bottomless pit and go into perdition. Sounds like, it reminds me of the son of perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. And so again, that going into perdition, you see that again in 17:11, verse 11 of chapter 17. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into destruction or perdition. So to go along with those words, you see the Space Force, where they're going to most likely try to protect us from a threat from outer space, the second coming, which is a threat only to them. It's going to be a great and dreadful day to them, not to us. And so they've got their Space Force, and look at that. They got the 6-headed dragon creature on the bottom left, peering over the top of a globe. Then it looks like a Nephilim standing over a globe, their little vector logo flying around it. I mean, so many different sinister things. The owl reminds me of Bohemian Groves. It's just, you can't make this stuff up. They literally put it out there for everyone to see. And so the more you dig into this, the more you realize this mystery of iniquity is not as mysterious. It's just the ancient demonic lies continuing on. And so people ask all the time, why would they lie about what we live on? Because they're unclean spirits. It's demonic. They are against the Most High. And following the clues is easy to do when you understand who you're at battle with. It's powers of darkness. It's not just mankind. Mankind could not pull off all the deceptions on their own. The globe model, there's no way mankind on their own convincing everyone they lived on a pressurized sphere in a vacuum, flying hundreds of times faster than a bullet. You would have to be an unclean spirit with all this wisdom of how to deceive people to get the entire world to believe that. I mean, it blows my mind that I believed that for so long, and it goes directly against most of the Bible, and especially the creation account, day 2 of creation. So lots of evilness here. I don't want to get too much into all the darkness. I know that some people, like especially in my early days, got drawn into just like all of this stuff, the Masons and the secret societies and the secret oaths. Yes, they're doing these things in secret. It's for a reason. They're not doing it in secret because they love us. They're not planning a long, grand surprise party. They're planning to war against the Most High, and they want to take as many lost souls as they can with them. And like somebody said, yeah, we can't have an alien invasion. If we lived in a closed system, we definitely couldn't. Have to have that open, deep space, spiraling out of control system. And so, yeah, the world leaders, remember, like it says, we talked about with the Little Season investigation, who are they deceiving? Kings of the earth. These kings of the earth are united. They are deceived. And so some good news here with this mystery to destroy the mystery. Guess what? Right here, Acts chapter 3, it says, unto you first, God, having raised up his son Jesus, sent him to bless you in turning away every one of you from his iniquities. What is that word iniquities? If you were here earlier, it is lawlessness. People were still partaking in lawlessness back then. That's why he sent his son to set us free from that. We're no longer a slave to our flesh, getting us to walk in the Spirit. Powerful stuff. And a lot of people, I like this verse here in Romans, they share it with me. It says, for what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, because that flesh wants to be lawless, Yahuwah sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. So that being set free from your flesh, being able to walk in the Spirit, that is a gift. Takes you to a different level of freedom that you cannot experience anywhere else. And so we want to be those people that the dragon, like it says here in Revelation, the dragon will war with, and it's those that keep the commandments and, there's an and, have the testimony of Jesus Christ. And you see people on both sides, most of the world being on the faith-only side, and the other half being on the commandments-only side. The path is narrow. The dragon's only going to be at war with those that are correct. He's not going to be at war with one side or the other. He wants to push you far off that narrow path. And so that narrow path is both. And so lots of controversy here. I know everybody has different views on this. It's not about, and a lot of people think you're self-righteous. I get that a lot, but it's the love. It says here in 1 John, it's the love of God that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. They're not bondage. It's because we love him. That's what it's about. And so skipping down to 14, here's the patience of the saints. Here are they that do what? They keep the commandments of God, and there's that faith aspect, the faith of Jesus. And then Revelation 22, blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life. I want to have right to that tree of life. So that thing will keep you alive. And then thinking about the mark, you go back to the mark of the Most High, Deuteronomy chapter 6, and thou shalt bind them, talking about the commandments, for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes, and thou shalt write them upon the post of thy house and on thy gates. Pretty cool stuff. And as I'm closing out here, I'm going through some things. This is not like some of these things we're going through. These are studies. I don't have everything laid out to be like this beautiful sermon. I just want to include you guys in my studies. So if you guys see something, you can come back and share with us what you're seeing, what your understanding of this stuff is. Because again, some of it is mysterious. We don't have it all figured out. But that mystery of iniquity has to do with lawlessness. That's one thing that's evident when you look at what those words mean. And it's becoming clearer that there's a hierarchy, especially in the kingdom, that Yeshua was always talking about. There's a least, there's a great, and there's a greatest, with the least being those that break the commandments and teach people to do so. It says those will be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. And so I've seen somebody having a debate about this, and the person said, well, but they're in the kingdom of heaven at least. Well, it says they'll be called the least. I don't know if that necessarily means they'll be in there if they're going around telling people, hey, you can break the commandments. And so they might be, but it says here they'll be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. The great will be those who do and teach them, and the greatest will be those that are humble, like a small child. Humble yourself like a small child. Those are the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. I think when they asked him, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, they all wanted to hear answers that put them in that category. And it's those that are humble. How cool is that? It didn't say who has the most understanding and figured everything out. We should be working to figure things out, but we also need to be humble. And if you're humble, you're going to figure more things out than if you think you know everything. It's a shortcut. It's a shortcut to figuring it all out. Keep yourself humble. But whosoever, this is another one. That's the actual quote that I just read. Matthew 22:36-40 here. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. If you look at it, it makes sense. Loving the Most High and loving people, loving your neighbor. If you do that, everything's going to fall into place. You're not going to have any other gods. You're not going to have graven images. You're not going to take his name in vain. And a lot of people think that means saying his name in vain. But I think taking his name is slightly different than saying his name. Keeping the Sabbath, honoring your parents, not murdering people, not committing adultery. And it's interesting. You think about that. People don't have a problem with you or me not committing adultery. They're great with that. They'll applaud you for that. But as soon as you keep Sabbath, it's like, how dare you? That's bondage. We're not under that. But it's like, you don't care if I'm not bearing false witness and I'm not committing adultery. You seem to applaud me for that. So it's like there's certain things that I don't understand why we're persecuted for. And I kind of do. And it goes back to Rome and that mystery of iniquity. But that it's weird to me that people are okay with certain commandments, certain laws, but there's others, not so much. All right. It's not going to go into that. I'll go ahead and I'll remove my presentation. I got a lot of extra slides on my study, but interesting stuff, sad stuff, dark stuff. You kind of got to look at the darkness before you can appreciate the journey that's already happened for us, for our sake, the things that the Messiah has done, the things that the Father has been through time and time again. And like it said in Acts, he loved us so much, he sent us his son to turn us away from our iniquity, things that would lead to our death, because the end result of breaking the law is death, and that's why the Messiah came. So beautiful stuff. And there's just so many good teachers out there now. We got Sean from Kingdom in Context. Glad to see him growing. He does a lot of good he's helped clear up so many misunderstandings about this, and it's good to have people like that out there doing these things. So many of you out there, some of you warriors, and I know a lot of people me and him see this a little bit differently when it comes to the law aspect, and I know where he's coming from, and he says things like, man, these people, that's all they talk about is the law, and that's all they seem to care about. And I understand it. I think it was Ken Heinerbrook who said, I used to be a Torah terrorist. Don't be a Torah terrorist. When you start learning about the law, don't just freak out. It's kind of like the shape of the earth. When I first found out about it, I was like, oh my goodness, I've got to tell everybody. I've got to warn, or I've got to show all this stuff to everybody. And it's controversial for a reason. It's that mystery of lawlessness that's been at work for generations. And so they've done a good job. They've had people like me who seeking a relationship with the Most High, thinking I had everything figured out. And still, when I would hear about appointed times or anything like that, I would just be like, that doesn't apply to me. I don't even want to learn about that. Sabbath, why do I need to do that? That was for people before me. I had those exact same thoughts. I understand where people are coming from when we talk about these things, but it's important to understand it, and it's important to listen to the words of the Messiah, because he tells us this is after the resurrection. If you think that everything he said applies to just the people he was talking to, and it didn't apply to the people after he resurrected, he tells us what he's going to say at his return. And he's still telling people that are partaking in lawlessness to exit. So you don't want to be one of those people or fall into that group. And so if you guys have any questions, I know it's a work night. Some of you got to get up early. I still have to plan a little bit of a lesson. We have a field trip tomorrow. So Hopefully I don't have to plan too much. But yeah, it's been, I feel bad because our last video, I like to cut out the very beginning and all the talk when I'm talking to people, and it gets rid of the live chat. I can't go back and see your questions afterwards. So if anybody had a question somewhere along the way while we were talking, you can share those now. Put them in all caps, like that one, Tyler Porter. And thank you guys, our moderators out there, always going to work and keeping people in check that are insulting. That's the one thing I don't like, is the anger and the spirit about people when they're on a different opinion of people in the chat or of me. Be kind. You're not going to win somebody over by attacking them. And so no matter what side you're on, okay, so just try to be kind. And I appreciate you guys keeping them in check. You guys are awesome. Our patrons, our supporters, you guys are a blessing. And as we work to hopefully branch away from being in a public school setting, having a steady income, we really appreciate those of you jumping on board and supporting us, because it's going to be a big jump. And I think the fearful side of me wants to go, well, just try to do both. Try to do a job and do the creation standard stuff where you're making content for the youth, and try to do both. And I don't think I can. I know how much time goes into what I'm doing now. That's why I haven't had a whole lot of time to put it into things with creation standard. But I'm hoping this summer to set aside several weeks of developing things. And if I end up, let's say for whatever reason, not doing it full time, I will definitely try to have resources available, and maybe just keep it free and just give on the side. Excuse me. Losing my voice. And maybe just give things on the side. But I don't know. I feel like this requires our full attention. We need to really be fighting for our children. And there's so many people leaving this exodus of all things, homeschool or all public school and worldly, and trying to separate away from the world. And so the best way is just to exit things. And I'm not saying public school is bad. I'm a public school teacher. The children that I teach are a blessing, and they have other good teachers. I'm not the only one. And so, yeah, it's extremely important to go this avenue and rescue these children, snatch them from the flames, because they are going to be taught things. Even, I've seen Christians come in, and I've had my own students say, man, you're telling me these things. My mom's always tried to tell me about a flood, but then I learned about these millions of years and all these things, and it doesn't make sense, and I don't know who to believe. And when you show them the evidence of the flood and these types of things that they are hiding from them, they get excited. And I want to see that interest in people who are, they're being schooled outside of the public school setting. I want to see that excitement, and I want to see them score better on the test, because they're still required to take these standardized tests. And so escaping from the lawlessness and setting ourselves apart, it's a good thing to have as people. And it may be one of those things that grows to where I have to have a team of 3 or 4 or 5, 6, who knows, people working together to do all this. So I'm hoping that can be where we go next year. Yes. Oh, you're welcome. The electrician. Probably have a lot of knowledge. I may be calling you. Give me your number. No. Our neighbor's actually an electrician, and the guy's been a blessing, because the first guy that did our wiring, he was, I walked in one day and he was like getting high on the job, and it was awkward. I didn't know what to do. But yeah, I was like, hey, I just came to drop some things off. And then I left, and I was like, man, our wiring's going to be messed up. And so, yeah, it is. That's why sometimes I'll be going live and my power just goes out. It's not because we have an old house. We're blessed to have a nice new house, just some faulty wiring. Let's see if I got any questions here. Looking forward to it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it as well. Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of people that are homeschooling are doing such a good job. It is hard teaching a lot of children. I know teachers get a lot of grief. It's hard teaching a room full of students who really, they need to be doing more physically active things. It's hard to teach them and it's no easy task. And so even your own children, even though it's a small setting, maybe you have 2 children, maybe you just have 1, it's not easy. So we all need help. We need a support system. I'm hoping to have a support system in place where we can all talk, share ideas, encourage each other. I know it's really hard, especially my wife. It's not always easy. My wife's doing a good job with our daughter, who is 6 years old, about to be 7. But it's not easy. Children don't always get excited about reading and math. So we need to help each other out. Yep. You're welcome. Thank you, Jackie Smith, for joining us. It's been fun covering these things and seeing these things. Is just it's fascinating. So I'm trying to do these things weekly so we can study together. These are just things that I'm studying out seemingly at random, but it's not. Everything, like with the way my mind works, it's back and forth. But sometimes along the way, going back and forth, you see things that are just beyond mind blowing. Joy Trujillo. That's not a question to ask. Trying to find questions. Do you vote? Do I vote? No, I don't. And I've gotten a lot of hate for that. But I have my reasons. I don't think it's like when I went to the voting precinct out where we live. We have our meetups there. It's a cheap place to rent. It's right down the street. There's no internet. Like there's no way they're sending these votes anywhere. Like I don't think it's real. I think it's all predetermined, mostly predetermined. There could be some local things that aren't. I don't want to say everything's predetermined. Don't vote. I just don't. I don't think it's real. On the higher level, at least on the higher level, I'll say that way. I don't think it's real on the highest levels. I think they are chosen probably somewhere down in Antarctica. Who knows? Who knows where they have their little meetings and decide these things. Let's see if I got any more questions. Yeah, please put your questions in all caps. Right there with you, Josh. I don't vote either. Haven't for years. Now, my parents, my mom was alive. They were real big Trump supporters, and they were like, "You need to go vote for him. We got to do this." And that was hard. It's like, I don't want to vote. I don't want to do this. I don't want to get into that system. But people will pressure you, and you'll get all that pressure. I'm just not looking forward to the divide. I don't know if you guys have noticed. They're already putting out political stuff about Trump, and I'm like, man, I feel like we just got out of that battle of the whole world being divided. And here we are, and it's happening again. Everybody's, waiting on this new Savior. We need to be looking to the Most High as our Savior and His beloved Son, who He sent for His example is how to live. These worldly people, they really can't do much. And and I'm not dissing anyone that votes. I'm not dissing any of you people. I was extremely patriotic, and I do care for people. I would, it's like love your neighbor aspect. Like we would die for our neighbors. But it's different once you know what goes on up top. I don't want to I don't know. I would just hate to have my children sent to a war that I know was fought for bad purposes, for the enemy's gain. Yeah, the point, divide and conquer. Can read Hosea. Is that a question? Did you want me to read Hosea? Try to ask it in the form of a question. Yeah, I don't mind going back, but it takes me a while to go to the Bible app, pull things up. If you have a question about that verse, let me know. I do like the book of Hosea. It's a good one. The Bible is full of government leaders. Daniel, Joseph. Yeah, there was lots of leaders in the Bible. These were leaders like King David. He was a really good king. And the ultimate purpose, though, the reason we had kings is because people wanted kings. That wasn't the Most High's design. When people were doing things the right way, they did not have a king. The Most High was their king. When we get to the millennial kingdom, He's going to be king of the whole world again. And so they wanted a king. They wanted to be like the other nations. And that's where Samuel comes in, and he's pleading with the people, and he tells them what the Most High says is going to happen if they have a king. And it happens. And it's a lot of the things that we're experiencing now. We are being taxed like 40%. I would say not 40%. I don't want to over exaggerate. It's a lot of 31% of my paycheck is gone. You know, taking. It's like they take it before I can get to it. I can't even take it and go, here, let me give you some money and donate it. Like they take your money out of your paycheck before you get it. And that's one of the results of having a king, a worldly leaders. They take part of what's yours. And so that was something that we could have avoided, but we wanted these worldly kings and worldly leaders. And there are some good ones. There's some people that do some good things, and you have to have some infrastructure there. So again, I'm not dissing anyone that does vote. Hello. Yeah, I think we need more Christians in government positions. Yeah, we need believers helping judge and do things like we're judged now by the law of the land. It's not always fair. You see a lot of unfair things happen. Yeah, just very, very sad seeing this whole puppet show going on. It's not really a system; it's a show to divide us. Christian good heating, yeah. So yeah, let me. Don't see any questions. And sorry for the way this thing started. I don't know how I clicked 7:15 in StreamYard. So if anyone was late, and then once I got started, of course, I had the mute button selected so that you guys couldn't hear me while the video was playing, and I forgot to unmute it. I'm gonna have to like make a really big conscious effort to unmute before I start. Yeah, I wanted to keep my word because I said in the comment we're starting at 7, and so I went with my word instead of going, yeah, I might as well wait because I know Sunday, some of you guys have to be up extra early. I wake up at like 6:30. I should probably get up a little earlier, but I have trouble sleeping, and so I try to sleep as much as I can. Yeah, just want to live in the woods. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, we do kind of live out in the woods, but yeah, I know there's so much less we would need, especially if we didn't have so much dependence on things the way we do now. When you look back at how people lived back then in the early before they had a king, and even when they had King David and stuff, like food was like you grow your own food. It's free. You're not taxed. Like when you grow your own food, you don't have to pay taxes every time you pick food. At least right now you don't. And the seeds come out of that food, and you can plant them and grow more food. Like it's this cool thing that the Father designed. And so I think it's yeah, living out and being able to take care of yourself is a big deal. The Father wants us to be able to do that, I think, to a degree and not be so dependent. Of course, it's kind of shifting the opposite direction. The world wants you to step away from that, live in this technological world where they're feeding you and they're in charge of these things. And so it's easier to do more harm when you control the flow of all those things. Do I take supplements? No, I don't. Probably need to take some vitamins or something because our soil, when they did things the biblical way, and I've been thinking about this, we're losing nutrients in our food. We're not doing things the way the Father wanted us to. We don't let the soil rest 1 year out of every like seventh year, you're supposed to let the soil rest. We don't do that. And you think about what that would do to the soil. If you're this tree, what goes into the ground is feeding the tree. When those fruits drop down, that would just replenish the roots and the nutrients in that tree for the next years. And so there's a lot of things we don't do that I feel like if we went back to doing the way that we're supposed to, according to the Father's instructions, our food would be a lot more nutritious. Instead, we're like, man, we don't like spots on our food, so let's just spray it. Oh man, that spray's killing it. Now let's get a GMO version and do and grow that. It'll withstand the poison. And so that's what's going on. And I'm studying that with my life science class right now. And it's crazy to me to think the year I was born was the very first GMO corn back in like I think 1983 was when they had GMO corn for the first time, and that was only 1983, not that long ago, and I think 40 years ago, and now most of the food is GMO, so that's a fast shift. You talk about corrupting all flesh. How did that happen so fast? Well, heck, now we've got 40 years worth of corrupting of food, just the food. And man, it was fast, 40 years. And now here we are with most of our food being that way. Crazy. Freemasons out here. Yeah. That was in all caps. I thought that was a question at first with sock accounts. Yeah, doing damage control. There are sometimes these sock puppet accounts that pop up, and they're always doing damage control on the truth videos. Do I believe Romans 16:20? Let me pull it up. Because if I don't believe it, may not be good. Romans 16:20. And the God of peace shall bruise Satan under your feet shortly. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. Amen. Oops, I lost my tab. Yeah, would you have a question about that? Why would I believe that? Why? Like, yes, I believe that. But could you specify? Who was it that had that question? Homemaker calling. Okay. Oh, we're getting into the little season stuff. Shortly. Well, I mean, it depends on how you take that bruising aspect. If you see that as the return, do you see that as his power being taken away because the Holy Spirit? It's up to your interpretation. Being 2,000 years, they talked about the return hundreds of years before Christ as it being quickly, because when it happens, it's going to happen quickly. It's going to happen fast, like a thief in the night to those that aren't awake. So I hope that answers. But again, I haven't had a chance to read the entirety to that message. Romans 16:20. I'll add that to my notes of things for the claims of preterism. Yeah. And I may do another video on that. We are not in the little season. I believe he was destroyed. Okay. Yeah, there's too many precursors to the millennial reign. That's, again, the little season investigation. It's a thorough one. It's deep. And I've really looked into it, trying to see, maybe there's a reason all these people are believing this. What are they seeing? And it seems the strongest evidence is more of like the mud flood type Tartaria stuff, and the prophecies where I get there's just too much in prophecy there. Yep. Thank you, Debbie and Dennis. You guys are awesome. Part of our weekly studies. These guys, man, they help bring our studies to another level. So thank you. The wise ones, the wise and humble ones. We've been blessed with good, humble people like you guys to study with. And gosh, it's a blessing, because not many people want to talk about things or can handle talking about things like this without getting upset. Yeah. And about that like little season aspect, getting back to that, thinking about that, it's hard for me to imagine that after that 1,000-year period that the enemy would just wipe out everything, and because they're not going to be allowed to. I mean, they're going to be deceiving them instead of wiping them all out. It's about, enduring into the end. But yeah, they're preparing us to battle the Most High right now, just like they will after the 1,000-year reign. Same goal: battle the Most High. The Revelation 16 versus Revelation 20, and so definitely going to be getting us to battle the Most High. So you're going to see the deceptions. The world's going to be deceived both times. So yes, we're under a lot of deceptions right now, just like we will be then. All right. Prayers, Chief Center is difficult. Yeah, well, I will go ahead and I'm going to end this stream. I thank you guys so much for joining us as we look at these things, the mystery of iniquity, the son of perdition, what this lawlessness is trying to get us to do. And it's important to look at the opposite of lawlessness, because you've got lawlessness. We want to be the opposite of that. I would hope. And again, I know that sounds controversial, but it's sad to think that we're in a world where if you want to get fame and you want to be if I wanted to be like a mega church preacher, it's got to be a message that people want to hear, and people's flesh wants to hear that you don't really have any rules. You just have to try and just keep messing up. Don't worry. You can't do very good. And obviously we're not perfect, but just don't worry. You've got this get out of jail free card. And it's sad because lawlessness is bad, but we're told as mainstream Christians that it's done away with, which means lawlessness. If it's done away with, there's no law. That's lawlessness. And so I don't know. It's an interesting thought process to go, how did I not see that? How did I not see that me thinking something is done away with is not lawlessness? But yeah, weird to think that, but we're all, and things are different. I have a lot of people, and we might investigate this next time. A lot of people say, good luck keeping all 613 laws. Well, I pulled up one of those websites with all those laws, and it's interesting because most of them apply to priests at the temple. You have some that apply to just women, some that apply to things we can't even do anymore. Like it tells you about sacrifices in the Bible. You're to make them where the Father, sets his name, where there's a temple, and there's a time for things. Now we have a new high priest. There's a change in the priesthood. Things are different. We're a dispersion. We're not in the land anymore. We will be brought back there, but things are different now. And a lot of people, when they hear you talk about the law, they think you're bringing back all the way to sacrificial temple times where we're sacrificing animals and doing all that. Totally different times, totally different locations. So yeah, do you think Rev 3.5? I don't know. Sorry, checking one last time for questions before we go. Nope, I don't see any. So, all right, my hand's invisible. That's cool. All right. Well, you guys are awesome. You're a blessing. I thank the Father for you so much. Being patient with us as we study these things out. We don't have all the answers. We don't have everything figured out. Just fun to study these things with you guys, have you guys part of this journey instead of doing it by myself. It gets lonely looking at all these things by myself. Of course, I got my wife, so she helps me out. But I know you guys enjoy seeing some of these things too, and enjoy sharing things with us. So we appreciate all that you've shared. We love you. The Father loves you. And we will see you guys around real soon.